Welcome to This Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're here. Today, we're jumping right into the sweeping, chaotic transformations of the American Gilded Age. We're going to see exactly how modern capitalism, big business, and organized labor were essentially born out of the ashes of the old world. It's a wildly fascinating story about how the economy you and I live in right now was actually built, brick by brick and steel beam by steel beam. So, let's get into it.
To really wrap our heads around this era, we've got to start with a brilliant, honestly kind of brutal concept from the economist Joseph Schumpeter. He called it creative destruction. Schumpeter argued that capitalism is almost like a biological mutation. It doesn't just quietly add new things to the economy. No, it relentlessly destroys the old economic structures from the inside out to make room for massive new ones. Basically, innovation obliterates the past to pave the way for the future.
And you can literally see this exact concept play out within a single family, the Carnegies. William Carnegie was a highly respected, skilled handloom weaver in Scotland, but when steam-powered looms hit the scene, his entire trade was completely wiped out. He moved his family to America, couldn't adapt, and essentially died broken by industrial progress. But his son, Andrew Carnegie, he didn't fight the machines, he embraced them. He started as a factory bobbin boy, learned the telegraph, mastered the railroads, and used those very same industrial forces to become a steel billionaire. It is the ultimate story of creative destruction.
Section 1. The Engine of Destruction.
So how did this new world actually get constructed? Well, picture America right after the Civil War. It was perfectly positioned for just an absolute explosion of growth. One observer at the time described the country as a gigantic bowl filled with treasure. And honestly, they hit the nail on the head. We had mountains of cheap coal and iron just waiting to be mined. We had a massive labor pool of immigrants and farm families flocking to cities. We built an unprecedented national railroad network that suddenly connected everyone into a single, massive market. And crucially, we had heavy government aid, like protective tariffs that slapped high taxes on foreign goods, artificially shielding American factories from outside competition.
Moving on to Section 2, Birth of the Corporation.
Here's the catch, though. You couldn't manage these gigantic nationwide railroad and manufacturing operations like a local mom-and-pop bakery. The scale was just way too big. They required a completely new legal and financial structure to survive, the modern corporation. And the true superpower of the corporation was a legal concept called limited liability. Before this, if you owned a piece of a business and it went bankrupt, your personal assets, like your home or your savings, could be seized to pay the debts. Limited liability completely changed the game. It legally shielded the shareholders. You could buy stock and reap the profits, but if the company went under, you only lost what you invested. This single, brilliant concept fundamentally lowered the risk of doing business, which unleashed massive waves of investment capital into the economy.
Now, as you might guess, not everyone was thrilled about this new arrangement. This 1833 quote from economist William M. Gouge brilliantly captures the public's early suspicion. By legally separating the owners from the company, the law created these artificial, fictive persons. Gouge pointed out that because a corporation isn't a human being, it doesn't have a moral conscience. It has, quote, neither bodies to be kicked nor souls to be damned. It was viewed as a machine designed purely for profit, completely divorced from human morality.
And get this, the government actually went out of its way to empower these soulless machines. Through court rulings, corporations gained incredible power. In 1886, a Supreme Court ruling in Santa Clara County essentially laid the groundwork for corporate personhood, meaning corporate entities were extended rights originally meant to protect freed slaves under the 14th Amendment. Add in mind-boggling government land grants, like giving the railroads 130 million acres of public land just to build transcontinental routes, and businesses suddenly had unprecedented legal freedom and public capital to grow.
Section 3. Kings of Integration. Armed with all that legal protection and capital, a ruthless new breed of businessmen stepped onto the scene. Take Andrew Carnegie. He adopted a new technology called the Bessemer process to mass-produce cheap steel, but his real genius was in management. He relentlessly cut costs through a strategy called vertical integration. Think about how this works. He didn't just make the steel. He leased the iron ore mines in the Messabe Range. He bought the ships and railroads to transport the ore. He bought the coal mines to fuel his furnaces. By owning every single step from the dirt in the ground to the final steel beam, he never had to pay a penny of profit to an outside middleman.
But here's where it gets really interesting. While Carnegie built his empire vertically, John D. Rockefeller took a totally different route with Standard Oil. He integrated horizontally. Rockefeller didn't initially care about owning the oil wells in the ground, he just wanted to own the refining step in the middle. He relentlessly swallowed up, bought out, or simply crushed his rival oil refineries. By acquiring nearly every competitor at that specific stage of production, he effectively owned the entire market choke point, forcing everyone to play by his rules.
This relentless pursuit of efficiency led to some incredible and honestly kind of bizarre innovations. Take the massive Chicago meat packers like Gustavus Swift and Philip Armour. They realized shipping live cattle by train was a huge waste of money because 60% of a cow is inedible. So they literally invented refrigerated rail cars to ship only the dressed meat. But what about all that waste? Well, as Armour famously bragged, they saved everything there was of a hog except the squeal. They turned blood into fertilizer, hooves into glue, fat into margarine, and scraps into sausage. They maximized profit by monetizing literally every atom of the animal.
Which brings us to Section 4, the labor pushback.
Now, why does this matter to our modern world? Because all of this extreme corporate efficiency came at a terrible human cost. As factories grew massive, bosses completely distanced themselves from the shop floor. Remember William Carnegie, the proud hand weaver? Mechanization stripped artisans like him of their autonomy and skills. Workers were increasingly treated like disposable parts in a giant industrial machine, expected to do maximum work for minimum wages. Stripped of their independence, laborers realized that as individuals they had zero power against a massive, faceless corporation. Their only option was to organize and fight back together.
And so, the labor movement evolved, and it evolved fast. Early groups pushed for the 8-hour workday, and the Knights of Labor dreamed of a universal brotherhood, hoping to eventually replace the wage system so workers could own the factories themselves. But in 1886, a catastrophic turning point occurred. A bomb was thrown at police during a labor rally in Chicago's Haymarket Square. The public recoiled in horror, instantly associating the labor movement with violent anarchism. This shattered the Knights of Labor, making way for the American Federation of Labor in the 1890s. The AFL was far more pragmatic. They abandoned those revolutionary dreams and just demanded bread and butter, which basically meant practical things like better wages, shorter hours, and safer working conditions.
Finally, Section 5, Monopolies and Mega Mergers. While all that labor unrest was bubbling up, the industrialists were fighting a really bizarre battle of their own. Paradoxically, these titans decided that capitalism's defining feature, free market competition, was actually ruining their profits because it drove prices down. So businesses began secretly colluding, forming trusts to artificially keep prices high. The public was furious, so the government passed the 1890 Sherman Antitrust Act to outlaw this price fixing. But there was a massive Supreme Court loophole. It effectively ruled that while colluding with a separate company was illegal, simply creating a holding company, a parent company that literally just buys up the stock of its competitors, was perfectly fine. This backfired spectacularly. It unintentionally sparked the Great Merger Wave, teaching businesses it was legally safer to just swallow your competitors whole.
Which leads us to this absolutely staggering number. Because of this massive wave of legal consolidation, John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil ultimately grew to control an unbelievable 88% of the entire American petroleum refining capacity. 88%! He quite literally brought order to a chaotic industry by becoming an absolute, undisputed monopoly. He famously claimed that individualism was gone, never to return.
But the absolute climax of this whole era of creative destruction? That hit in 1901. The legendary investment banker J.P. Morgan, a man who openly said he preferred combination over competition, set his sights on the steel industry. He asked Andrew Carnegie for a price, and Carnegie just scribbled a number on a piece of paper. $480 million. Morgan accepted it instantly. He bought out Carnegie, merged his massive empire with competitors, and created U.S. Steel, the very first billion-dollar corporation in history. In one single transaction, Carnegie became the richest man in the world, and corporate consolidation reached a scale previously thought impossible. As we wrap up this explainer on the creative destruction that built our corporate economy, I want you to look at the world around you today. The scale, the horizontal and vertical integration, the pushback from labor, the battles over government regulation, it's all profoundly familiar, which leave us with one highly provocative thought to carry with you. We may have curbed the steel and oil monopolies of the Gilded Age, but when you look at how they consolidate power, acquire competitors, and relentlessly optimize efficiency, are the tech titans of today just repeating the exact same playbook? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.